Nicole, welcome this evening to Queer News Tonight.
Thank you.
We
Great to
are
be here.
we are excited to talk to you because rarely do I get verklempt over LGBT history, and I am in being able to talk to you because you have been at Sentinel moments of LGBT civil rights in America and for the world, and we're getting ready to explore it. So thank you very much for being with us here at Queer News Tonight. So let me begin with the court system. So many people might not be familiar. You are Queen Mother of the International Court System. More than 70 chapters around the country. For those that follow RuPaul, lots of people know me in connection with RuPaul's Drag Race. Talk about the court system. And Queen Mother sounds like an impressive title. I happen to know it is. But tell us about...
it's an aging title.
Well, Queen Elizabeth got a lot of respect from aging too. So
yeah, but you got to remember, she wasn't the Queen Mother. Her mother was the Queen Mother. She was. I could identify with her. Anyway, the International Imperial Court System started with its first chapter in San Francisco. And what's interesting, its founder was Jose Julio Sierra, and he was a World War II veteran. And also in 1961 became the first candidate to run for public office. Now, if you think about it, he lived through as I have, the McCarthy era, the Nita Bryant era, and from one, I always say he was like Johnny Appleseed. From a seed he planted in San Francisco, it grew into a royal oak tree, and with branches in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as you said. Yeah. And now we have 70 chapters.
Yeah, and help our viewers understand your title as Queen Mother. What is your official role? Do you open grocery stores and?
Actually, no. I do that as the honorary mayor of. I cut ribbons there.
Cut ribbons, right?
With that, I call it the civic and the royal title. Right. But sometimes they collide. The best way to say or describe the court system is we're the LGBTQ Shriners or Elks of the Americas, except we don't run little hats and thing. We have crowns and gowns.
Yeah,
and we have no staffs, no headquarters, and all we do is raise money and for other organizations.
Exactly.
And we've been doing that since the 1960s. And have been through it all. And there's also, since our founder was the first openly gay candidate to run for public office in 1961, we also are involved in activism. We were one of the first in California to raise money. Jack Campbell, who was the treasurer during the Anita Bryant campaign, we raised, I think it was about $4,000 just passing the hat in a coronation ball. Yeah. And Jack, I believe, wrote in his book that we were one of the first to send money from California to fight Anita Bryant.
And a little known fact, the court system in that hat pass helped purchase the pie that got pushed in her face here in Miami. So we're very, very happy about that. Nicole is a Latino LGBTQ plus activist for over 50 years. And listen to some of the things that Nicole has been involved in, and you'll understand why coming to the Seminole Hard Rock for the designation at Diversity Honors. Former state chair of Equality California. I almost said Equality Florida. I'm so used to saying that, but Equality California has advised and served with dozens of mayors in California from Los Angeles to San Diego. Has served on the boards at the Gay Rights National Lobby, at the Human Rights Campaign, the HRC, the National LGBT Task Force. We broadcast the National Dinner at Miami Beach Convention Center. He is head of one of the oldest LGBT organizations in the United States, as I said, the Imperial Court, founded in 1965 with 70 chapters. The emphasis of your advocacy in LGBT for 50 years, you've watched the process of 1969 at Stonewall and the Reagan years over AIDS and his silence, and then the AIDS movement and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then to Obama and how his understanding evolved to gay marriage, to Donald Trump, to even what we're seeing today at DeSantis. Tell us a little bit about your advocacy and what you've seen over your last 50 years for LGBTQ.
Well, I've always said that God's blessed me to be alive and to witness and be part of the growth and the visibility of the two communities that I love, and that's the Latino and the LGBTQ community. I come up from this time before a time before Stonewall. I come from a time when, can you imagine progressive California? It wasn't until 1976 that homosexuality was legal. You could be sent to a mental hospital, and I knew many people who were, at a stroke of a pen, a signature of your parents or a judge, subjected to lobotomies and electric shock treatment. So coming from those times and the bar raids, because what was happening at Stonewall was happening across the country, the discrimination. So I grew up also not only being called a fag and a queer, but also a wetback and a spick. So to see the two communities actually in California and Texas and all over growing more and more, the Latino community and the LGBT, I feel really blessed to do that. My outlooks, my parents, my father was very involved in Latino civil rights organization and a leader in the American GI Forum. That's why I've always been patriotic, because my brother and father served in it. I was rejected, of course. I think I was kind of flaming when I came in. But I think it's important that our community realize that we've been in the fabric of this America since the beginning. I mean, the two-spirited of the American Native, the Native American culture, and the two-spirited. I mean, when the explorers went back to Europe, they told their monarchs about men who were dressing as women and women who were dressing as men. And also that, no one even heard, a lot of times when I speak at colleges or even high schools, I bring up Baron von Steuben, who was the Revolutionary War, unbelievable. I hope your listeners look him up, the Baron. He was a Valley Forge. He was openly gay and brought two of his lovers to Valley Forge. He was the number one in Europe that could get an army together. And obviously, the Revolutionary War, they're mostly farmers, are American soldiers, and he whipped them into thing. In fact, this is what's great. We lay wreaths at his every year in front of his statue, and the Baron statue is only one of 5 statues at Lafayette Park, right across the White House. So we especially enjoyed putting our rainbow wreaths and coloring when Trump was in the White House.
Yeah. I want to mention in terms of your reference on the two-spirit, and Nicole is talking about Native Americans in a philosophy of how they intersect a homosexual community and broadly how that's defined. Interesting in that the Hard Rock chain is owned and all
Yes,
the entire chain by the Seminole tribe of Florida and the Miccosukee.
One of the biggest allies of our community has been what the Native American, the tribe, is doing in Florida. They're doing across the country. I mean, they are definitely co-sponsoring and sponsoring so many LGBTQ events, not only civil rights wise, but charity. And they are truly a wonderful people.
Yeah, exciting as a result to have diversity honors at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel here in Hollywood. Nicole, I want to come back to your reference of 50 years of advocacy, a task force, an HRC, and the Imperial Court, and all of the political work that you've done at Equality California and advising mayoral campaigns and those in office from LA to San Diego. You talk about the intersection of the slurs that you experienced as Latino and the slurs that you receive in the early days and not so early days for LGBT. Was one worse than the other? Did one attack or the other be more
Well,
painful or harmful?
pretty soon, pretty soon you got used to them. Sad to say, but in my mind, I was going to make sure that they knew the works and my activism of this queer and this wetback, because the discrimination that LGBT people have faced has also been faced and continues to be faced, as we know, by our African American community. Look at the Asian Pacific Islander community with what's happened to them and the focus on hate crimes on them, and the Jewish community. I believe like Harvey Milk did, and that is in coalition building and building bridges, because the enemies of the LGBTQ community are basically the enemies of the Jewish community, the Latino, the African American community. So my hope and my knowledge is we could win this battle, because a war has been declared on our community.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the Anita Bryant days. And the way we can win this war is to bridge these bridges, reach out to these other organizations, and know that a hate crime, not only say it, but live it, that a hate crime against any of us is a hate crime against all of us.
So you've just outlined very to the point the intersections of faith attack, race attack, gender attack, sexual orientation attack, not only black but brown, Asian, people of color attack. Are you hopeful that all of these intersectional communities will join forces to stand up and fight where these attacks come from?
Let me tell you, I remember during AIDS, I would wonder, because so many of our leaders were dying. I thought, who is going to carry that torch? And to tell you honestly, my greatest joys is speaking and going to youth groups and university. I believe it will be the next generation that will lead us to that mountaintop of equality. I believe that if you look at even MTV, I mean, they have so many gay characters. And there was a time, as you know, we would never see ourselves on TV. It's this new generation. I always say that definitely Kennedy's thing about the torch has been passed on to a new generation. And indeed, in the LGBTQ community, a torch has been passed on. And that torch has been grabbed by some activists that are so out and proud. I mean, I remember my generation, we would never think of holding hands or putting our hair in rainbow. We were criticized for having Beatle haircuts. But I have great faith. I do not believe I and others of my Stonewall generation will live to see them reach that mountaintop, but I believe they will take us there.
Yeah, very reminiscent of MLK's words for his community. I want to come back to the Latino issue that you talk about. As we were preparing in talking about diversity honors and the incredible award that you're getting ready to receive, we see some of the pictures of Cesar Chavez, and you were presented with the Social Justice Award presented by his widow, Helen. Tell us a little bit about what, we have some pictures of that, what your reaction in terms of the representation for the Latino community and from the Latino community, what that was for you.
Well, I've had the honor of working with Senor Chavez. And in fact, I talked him into coming to the National March on Washington in 1987, where he spoke. And he's such a humble man. I've had the honor of meeting like Coretta Scott Skeen and the warmth and the the authenticness and of these two people is just, it was a highlight of my life to meet and work with Senor Chavez. But Senor Chavez, people don't realize a Latino was the first gay civil right, I mean, was the first civil rights activist that supported homosexual civil rights in the 1970s. He was the first civil rights activist to do so. And why? Because of the coalition building of Harvey Milk, supporting the Great Boycott and so forth. And now we have Stuart Milk serving with, gosh, his co-founder on the equality board. So it's that coalition building that is so important, and that Harvey Milk, I had the honor of working with. His sense of humor always got me. But in the 1970s, against the Brig initiatives of Anita Bryant and California, and Harvey was just unbelievable. Was definitely a visionary, because he supported in office not only working families, seniors, but Latinos and the African American, the Black Civil Rights Movement. And he got criticized for that, because LGBT leaders at that time said, hey, you should just focus on gay rights, and that should be your priority. Well, his priority was human rights and the rights of all people. And so that's what attracted me to him and to work with him as a Latino, because when he embraced the Great Boycott, to me, he was embracing my community and my people.
You know, Nicole, such a fabulous opportunity for me to ask. You're intersecting over the last 50 years with a great Latino civil rights activist and a great LGBTQ civil rights activist, and then your participation with them. If they were alive today and they were watching what we are watching in America today, especially here in Florida, with this potential two that are going to vie for 2024, what would they say about what they're watching here in America today?
You know, I believe that their reaction would be the same as I've said many times. I believe if Jesus came down right now and saw and heard what people are saying in his name, he would weep. And I think that Senor Chavez and Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther, for all their sacrifice, their lives to the equality of all people, would come down, they would weep also. But I think they would also be proud, because they would know that we're not just going to sit back, that we're going to fight back, and that we realize that voting and getting involved in politics is the answer. Yeah. And also coming out. Harvey always said, come out, come out. Well, of course, because what's changed America and the Gallup poll of thing is people saying, oh, my coworker's gay, my neighbor's gay, my minister is gay,
my uncle is gay.
Exactly. So these are the things of coming out and getting involved in the political process and voting. You know, as a Latino, I wish all the Latinos would vote in California and Arizona, New Mexico, and so forth, because then actually we would have the state legislature majority, and we'd have Latino governors. But sadly, we're improving. A lot of people just don't vote.
You know, Nicole, I want to talk about one of the activist lines that so many in Florida are talking about today, and really all over the country. Tennessee has thrown the gauntlet down and declaring the culture war, and that's drag queens. You were one of the nation's first non-binary activists and drag queens to be appointed to city and state public office, and since that time, we have watched, especially over the course of the last year, here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has demonized drag queens as groomers and has attacked businesses like the Disney Company and Hyatt Regency in terms of their liquor license. And Tennessee has declared a statewide ban on public performance of drag queens. What are your thoughts? your days of your position in the royal court. What do you think about what we're watching about drag queens?
Well, like I said, I believe first we had, and I call this the war of McCarthy, Joe McCarthy, and then it was Anita Bryant declaring the war. Obviously, we had AIDS, and we've always seemed to have hate. But this time, this is the third, I call it the third war. It is because they're trying to erase our transgender community. The drag is unbelievable. If Santos would only realize that in the military, in World War I and World War II, there were drag shows. There were no women allowed on that stage. The WACs actually had, are you ready for this, workshops for soldiers how to put their makeup on and be impersonators and drag queens. And guess who attended one and raved about it? President Roosevelt. So we have a long history of culture, not only Shakespeare and so forth, when they wouldn't let women on the stage, it was female impersonators of drag queens. And what is lost in our community is, I think you realize that in the 60s, what were the fundraisers? There was no task force, there was no victory for HRC. There were bars and drag shows, because we all know that the African community in the churches were their safe place in their Black civil rights movement. And our movement in the early years, the bars were our safe place. And the fundraising that was happening was drag queens. And our court system, being starting in the 1960s, was a great part of it. Even if you look in the AIDS crisis, and what is lost are three things: the drag involvement and fundraising, the leather community's involvement, and women. I mean, thank God the women took the place, sadly, of many men who were passing in our leadership. I remember, I think it was David Mixner called a war conference in the Senate retreat in Washington, D.C. that I attended. And I'll never forget when someone at the end of this conference, it was a conference of national leaders, and it was on the AIDS crisis, and said, who in this room has AIDS? And I'll never forget, I think it was more than half of the men stood up. I knew we were in trouble then. And thank God that the women stepped forward and are still being the rightful place of leadership in our community.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. You talk about the importance of our gay bars. The one in the southern half of Manhattan in New York in 1969 basically becomes sacred ground for us, and that is Stonewall. Interesting, Nicole, you were the founder of the National LGBTQ Wall of Honor at the Stonewall Inn in New York City. So you know what you're talking about in terms of the holy ground of civil rights in America.
My most famous saying is this, and it's been quoted quite a bit, and is that a community, indeed a movement, that doesn't know where it came from and doesn't know whose shoulders it stands on, really doesn't know where it's going. And I strongly believe that. We seem to forget, you're right, we dedicated it at the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, and we put in 50 names. And we should not forget these people. When that mountaintop is reached by this generation of equality, they should not forget who struggled and who pushed them up that mountaintop. Yeah. And it seems that a lot of times we forget this. We forget the contributions of not only the drag community, the transgender of the community, the women's community, and the people of color's community. Our history is so important because it needs to be taught, and there needs to be a little pride in it. Every day I thank God I'm alive, because I've lost so many friends and so many colleagues. I just lost Darcel in Portland. 92 years. Wonder if she owned Darcel's a show bar, and she wasn't only just a drag queen. She had meetings with the mayor, worked on Harvey Milk Street and Portland to get that done. And so, sometimes when you look at drag queens and you look at me, I'm a perfect example. We're more than just a wig and dressing up. There's a lot to us. Drag queens have been activists in their hearts. for decades because they had to be. Like I said, I'm glad that there's the and the Victory Fund and all, because that is so important. That we have these organizations in Washington. The Harvey Milk Foundation. I mean, Stuart Milk. People don't realize when he goes to Europe and some of they invite all these leaders of ours. I won't mention them, and they won't go because of death threats. Stuart's there, right there. I think, people say, "Oh, Stuart Milk is walking the footsteps of his uncle." No, he's made his own footsteps, and his journey is one that is worldwide. I'm sure that Harvey is just beaming at every success Stuart does.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the Harvey Milk Foundation, the reason why I'm having the privilege to talk to Nicole today is Diversity Honors. And Diversity Honors on April 1st is going to be at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino and Hotel in Hollywood. It is a fundraising event for one of the top LGBT community centers in America, Pride Center at Equality Park here in Wilson Manors, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boys Town, Equality Park. They're in the same genre of importance in America. Nicole, I'm curious. So you're coming to Fort Lauderdale, and you'll be in our community. We always argue and we make fun in a tongue-in-cheek way. We here in South Florida are the gayest place on planet Earth. It's not Los Angeles. It's not San Diego. It's not San Francisco. It's South Florida, and we'll argue with it. With you when you come down. And,
I think Palm Springs would also be arguing with us.
They probably would argue with us too. But so you're going to come to Fort Lauderdale, and you're being presented with the Harvey Milk, very prestigious Harvey Milk Medal. Now, this has been kind of an LGBT civil rights history lesson in getting to talk to you today. When you heard that you were going to be presented by the Harvey Milk Foundation for the Harvey Milk Medal, what was your reaction to that? All of the awards that you've done, all of the things that you've done, what was your reaction to it?
Well, I think of the court system because, as you probably know, it was the Imperial Courts that led the campaign that resulted in the U.S. Harvey Milk postage stamp that was unveiled at the White House. And many of us of the court people were there. And also then, as soon as Don't Ask, Don't Tell was lifted, we immediately launched a letter writing campaign to get a vessel named after. And as you know, that happened too. This was in its old fashioned. I encourage people, instead of emails, and write letters. You write a letter to whatever cause. It attracts, because people don't do that anymore. And I got our courts to write letters and get their friends to write letters and stuff. We had the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, because they knew the Empress there, write a letter and so forth. So to get this award, I believe, is not only acknowledgement of me, and I cherish the relationship that Harvey Milk and I had as activists, but I always say, as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. And any of my accomplishments have been because people believed in it. When I said, hey, let's start writing letters to get a stamp, and how did that happen? Because I worked on to get a stamp for Cesar Chavez. So I said, wait, don't we have one too? And we are continuing our campaign to get one for Bay and Ruston, and also Marsha P. Washington, Sylvia Rivera, and Jose. Queen Anne Ervichet of the task force, who recently died, passed a couple of years ago. So, because here's my belief. We are been in the fabric of America, so why shouldn't we have schools named after our heroes, have streets named after them, and have parks named after them? Because as a Latino, I can look and see a Chavez Park. I can look and see this and that. Well, I want to see the heroes of our communities across this nation have their own streets and parks. I'm very proud that San Diego was the first city to dedicate a street in honor of Harvey Milk. The second one, oh, that's my, the second one was Salt Lake City and that great Mayor Jackie. And then the third one was Portland. The fourth one was Paris. And the fifth one was in Miami, I believe, in Florida.
Miami. Right, exactly. Nicole, what a great pleasure to meet and talk to you. I'm a great student of our LGBTQ community and constantly focus on learning new things. Last question for you. You're going to be here in Fort Lauderdale at that magnificent Seminole Hard Rock Hotel, and you're going to be presented for 50 years of your advocacy in so many of our institutional iconic civil rights moments and organizations. You're going to be presented the Harvey Milk Medal. You receive the medal and you talk. The next day, do you say, I'm done, okay, that's it, I've accomplished it? What happens on the next day?
Well, I have all kinds of projects going on. As you said, the National Wall of Honor of LGBT at the historic Stone Inn. The next, we put 5 people a year, and it will be on June 22nd will be the National Wall Honors and honorees. And then I'm also working, it's called Operation Drag Defense, and it's a fund. We're about to issue 10,000 to different, we're going to hopefully work with Equality. I talked to them yesterday, the Equality Federation, because we have court chapters in these cities, in Montana and Idaho and Kentucky and so forth. So we're going to do what we do best, and that's raise money. I believe that when God calls me, I'll probably have a phone here and a phone here, and keep, because I think it's important that we do what God's given us a gift. I think God gave me the gift of being an activist, and I will use it to the fullest.
Yeah, and those are powerful words. Diversity Honors, December 1st at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood. Benefit for the Pride Center at Equality Park. It's been such a pleasure. What a history lesson of the LGBT community and the history of more than 50 years that Nicole has touched. You want to be at Diversity Honors, if for no other reason, to meet and shake hands with Nicole M. Ramirez. Thank you so much for being with us today, this evening at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you. God bless.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.